What's up, y'all? One Piece One Life here, and guys, wow, did I find something that would revolutionize this channel. So in case you haven't seen my short the other day, I discovered all of those effect TikToks that you can do. Well, less so discovered because I already knew that they existed, and more so stopped being lazy and actually figured out how to be able to do it myself. And wow, did that short blow up, at least relative for me, because I got 14 new subscribers off of that one short alone. So to all y'all new people, welcome. I love it that you're here. Now see, that short was about crew battles. So in my mind, I was just like, well, why don't I just ride out the crew battle wave and hop on to talk about a crew battle that absolutely must happen in the story. Probably the only crew battle that absolutely does need to happen before the end. And of course, that's gonna pit the Straw Hats against the Blackbeard pirates. Everyone knows that this battle is coming. There's no escaping it. This has been seeded since the pre-time skip era. Luffy and Blackbeard are gonna clash, and it's probably gonna be a bloodbath. And by bloodbath, I mean more so that blood is just being spilled in terms of like being punched and bruised, but not actually death, because you know Oda doesn't do death, especially not of main characters. But I digress. It will happen. And because it'll happen, that's what I want to talk about today. Predicting each of the Straw Hat versus Blackbeard pirate matchups. Because even though a lot of them seem to be locked in already and pretty obvious, I still think that there's room to, talk about why at least. So sit back, relax, and maybe go order yourself a cherry pie, because we're about to get into it. But before we start with this scrumptious meal, guys, please, I need y'all to do something for me. Like the video, subscribe to the channel for more One Piece content just like this, and share it around with all your friends who love this series. Let's get it going. Now see, this is also coming from the fact that I did the Straw Hats versus Red Hair Pirates a few months ago, so it's gonna be kind of a similar concept, and that is I'm just gonna start at the top brass and work my way down. And so kicking us off, the one thing that should be the most obvious is definitely Luffy versus Blackbeard. Again, no one can ever acknowledge that this isn't a setup fight. In fact, I would be more interested if this didn't happen, just to see what Oda could actually do and how he's going to utilize these characters. Because we all know Luffy has a vendetta against Blackbeard for literally the entirety of the Paramount War situation. Though in an interesting way of fate, if you really break it down enough, Blackbeard essentially saved Luffy. Because without the Paramount War, Luffy would have gone straight into the New World just like that and probably died. Some people say it's coincidence. I say it's fate, especially because they're both members of the D-Clan. But we all know that the fated battle between Luffy and Blackbeard is probably going to be one of the most epic put to page in One Piece. But I will say this about Blackbeard. If he's going to be one of the last major opponents left for Luffy to beat in this story, he better glow up fast. Nah, because I'm sorry to say it, but Blackbeard is nowhere near Luffy's current power level, to the point where it's almost embarrassing. Because real quick, let's compare their Egghead arc portrayals. On one hand, you got Luffy, who is casually no-diffing 2 Admiral level or higher opponents at the same time. Meanwhile, you got Blackbeard, who is struggling against Trafalgar Law. And I'ma say it again for the people in the back. Law was having this man sweating and huffing. Pause. Not like that. Y'all nasty. Get your mind out of the gutter. Now I'm not gonna sit here and say that Law is weak. I don't think that he's weak. He is strong, definitely. But guys, let's be real. Law is not on the power level to be giving actual emperors any problems. Because to once again draw a comparison, I would say that Kid and Law are roughly equal in strength. In fact, I go as far as to say that the difference between Kid and Law with favor to Law is the same difference as that between Zoro and Sanji with favor to Zoro. That is to say, we know who is stronger, but not by that much, to where they can generally be assumed to be placed around the same region of strength. This is what happened when Kid pulled up on Shanks. Now contrast that to what happened when Law pulled up to Blackbeard, or I guess more accurately, Blackbeard pulled up to Law. And I'm sorry, but I genuinely believe that any actual emperor is steamrolling, one-tapping, one-shotting a Kid or Law leveled opponent. Like, I don't feel like that's crazy to say. Kaido, Big Mom, Whitebeard, even Luffy right now, I genuinely believe that if any of them go all out from the beginning, they are definitely going to decimate Law. And Blackbeard is the only person who as far as we've seen, is incapable of doing that at that level. Because again, it's not like we can argue that he was holding back. He literally said he was trying to kill Law so that he can get his devil fruit. There's no holding back there. And then people will try and argue,
oh, well, that's because all of them have advanced conqueror's haki, so obviously they're going to be placed above him.
Well, listen up. I don't know what you guys want him to do then, because we know that he's not getting advanced conqueror's haki. And then, mind you, just remember that he was jumping Law with his Titanic captains. Now keep in mind, everything that I set up to this point, it has been relative to at this moment or right now. Because I genuinely believe Blackbeard has one of the highest potential peaks that we have ever seen in this series, or could ever see in this series. By the end of the series, or by the time that it's actually time for Luffy to fight him, he's definitely going to be at the level where he's one-tapping kid level opponents. But as of right now, that is laughable. If we're being honest, Luffy probably just rolls him up into a basketball and starts using him to shoot hoops. He's already rotund. Now in the next battle, I have another obvious one, but that's Zoro versus Shiryu. Now it's weird because Shiryu's strength has always been hard for me to place, but then again, so has all of the Blackbeard pirates. Like genuinely, anytime we've seen the Blackbeard pirates as a collective trying to fight, it's not been impressive. Versus Hancock, versus Aokiji, versus Garp. Now one thing is that it's going to be tricky for Zoro, not necessarily in terms of strength, but in terms of perception and all the tricks that he can play, because we know that Shiryu has the Suke no Mi, or clear fruit, allowing him to turn invisible. Now most people think that his observation haki is going to be able to take care of that problem easy peasy. I don't think that, for two main reasons. The first is one that we see in story, when he used his invisibility to try and sneak up on Garp during the Hachinosu raid. The way that Garp was able to notice that he was there was through physical markers like dust rising off the ground, and that's how Garp was able to pinpoint him. He did not use haki. The second reason is that I personally believe that the awakening of the Suke no Mi allows one to mask their entire being from, at least this plane of existence, meaning Zoro will likely have to tap into something deeper in order to actually be able to perceive him, some sort of other power unique to him. Maybe something tying into Ashura, who knows? I mean, I even see a perfect defense type move where, since all of the swords when he's in his Ashura are all around him, if he keeps spinning in one place, there's no way for Shiryu to get through. And then another thing just to tack on to that is that, what would be the reason of Shiryu killing Absalom and getting his fruit? Why would Oda do that if observation could take care of that? Now for the third battle, I'm gonna have to give it to Sanji versus Burgess. Even though the Blackbeard pirates have been hard for me to play strength wise, I've always maintained that Burgess has always been somewhere in the top 3, where Blackbeard is clearly above him and he's somewhere relatively next to Shiryu. Similar to Sanji fighting Lucky Roo from my Red Hair versus Straw Hats video, one of the reasons that I think Sanji's fighting Burgess is because of the fact that they're both melee fighters. So it's really good to see just how that raw strength, how Sanji is using that to his advantage and overcoming that. There is something I thought of, like strength from science versus strength from a devil fruit, and trying to make the contrast of that, but I don't know, it's kind of stretching. Now what I will say about this is that most people who I talk to about this topic, they give Burgess to Jinbe. Personally, I don't think that's the case, because I gave Jinbe a different opponent, which we'll be talking about shortly. And by shortly, I mean right now, because next up we're gonna have the matchup of Jinbe fighting Sanjuan Wolf. And I already know what you're thinking. How is anybody gonna fight Sanjuan Wolf, let alone Jinbe? Bro is massive. But don't forget, we've already seen Sanjuan Wolf get knocked flat on his ass before. And of course, I'm talking about from Garp. Now that's crazy. Garp really had a whole giant with the further gigantification fruit with his entire head underwater, saying ow. Now here's the thing, even though that is Garp and people will say that that's just hyping up Garp's strength, I do believe that since we've seen it, it's bound to happen again, or at least it's possible to happen again, despite his strength. And I think Jinbe is the perfect person to be able to capitalize on that, given that he has a track record of fighting giant-sized opponents. I mean, see how he dispatched Moria during the Paramount War, and he took out Wadatsumi on Fishman Island. And in terms of how this fight would go, I personally think that it would be very interesting to see Jinbe actually having to control the water inside of a person. And maybe because of the fact that Wolf is a giant, all those shockwaves created from all that water pressure is actually damaging him more because he's bigger and there's more of it. That's all I really have to say about Jinbe's battles, because I'm not gonna lie, I'm not very interested in Jinbe's battles. You know whose battles I am interested in though? Frankie. And that's why we're gonna have Frankie going up against Avalo Pizarro. And I think that this is gonna be so amazing only because of the potential of having a literal island going against an island buster, especially if we take the whole joke of, oh, Frankie is a ship now, Frankie's a ship now. Literally, like, imagine he makes at least part of him into a ship that can literally blow up parts of islands. Or hell, it may be time to bring out the Sunny Mech Megazord theory. Now here's the thing for both of them. Now here's the thing, I do believe that Frankie and Jinbe's fights could be interchanged. This happened in the Red Hair Pirates video too. And now if I had a nickel for every time Frankie and Jinbe's hypothetical opponents could be swapped with each other, well, I would have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Now for the battles after that, it starts to become clearer and clearer who's gonna fight who, just because of what options are left. Which brings us to Robin versus Catarina Devon. Now Catarina Devon's entire entire backstory is that she used to go around hunting the heads of beautiful women, chopping them off and keeping them as trophies. That's why she was in level 6. Basically, she's one twisted chick. Damn, she sounds like my ex. So because of that entire thing, it's very obvious that either Robin or Nami is going to be her opponent. Now, I've dabbled with the idea of what if Nami fought her, but genuinely, I have a better idea for Nami saved for the end of the video. So here, I think we can slot in Robin versus Catarina. As for the fight itself, I don't know. It may be interesting to see Robin have some hockey, but I honestly think that if she was gonna have hockey, we would have been shown it by now. And besides, she's been fine without it. I mean, she beat Black Maria, which in fact, you know what? Let's make that her power. She's going to master that Demonio floor form. As for her compatriot Brook, I'm going to have him fighting Vasco Shot. Now this isn't only because this is the last matchup that's left where all the others after this are just clear as day since. Well, okay, it started like that, but when I started thinking about it, there's a few connections here and there. For one thing, from everything that we've seen from Vasco Shot so far, his abilities are related to fire generation. Obviously, he has the alcohol fruit, but his whole thing is drinking alcohol and then being able to it's flammable, so he sets it on fire. So having the contrast of his fire against Brook's ice, and Brook's ice having to overcome and maybe even freeze those flames or freeze the alcohol, that could be interesting. I also think that his fruit is going to be very gimmicky in terms of it's going to be tricky with a lot of different facets to it, but once Brook understands it, he'll actually be able to take him out. I also think that Vasco Shot is a very party-ish person, so maybe, you know, he's going to be very susceptible to all the music kind of enchantments that Brook plays. But the final reason that I really slotted this in is because of Binks Sake. We all know Binks Sake is one of the biggest songs, or if not the biggest song, in the entirety of the One Piece lore. So I fail to see how there can't be a connection between the guys who would always play Binks Sake on the Rumbar Pirates and the guy who literally has an alcohol-based fruit. If anything, it would be a match made in heaven and a great opportunity for Oda to actually explain to us why Binks Sake is so important through this battle with Brook. Now the next two is going to be fairly obvious just because of their roles, and that's going to be Doc, Q, and Stronger versus Chopper, as well as Usopp versus Van Augur. The doctors fighting each other somewhere makes sense. The snipers fighting each other somewhere makes sense. I think that because Doc Q's ability is all about disease generation and new kind of illnesses, it plays perfectly into Chopper's dream of becoming a cure-all, where he has to figure out on the fly things he can do with the material around him to actually be able to, you know, alleviate or take care of that illness or sickness. And then for Usopp versus Van Augur, I think this would be a really great time for Usopp to have a observation hockey bloom. Because think about it, with the Warp Word fruit, Van Augur can teleport anywhere and just keep taking shots from anywhere on the battlefield. Most likely he's going to be doing that to keep trying to attack the other fighters on the Straw Hat side. So then imagine that it's just up to Usopp himself to literally have to predict almost where Van Augur is going to end up, or where his shots are going to be fired from, or where his shots are going to, so that he can match them. Oh, I just thought of something crazy. What if Usopp taps into Future Sight? Think of it. That's a facet of observation haki, the one haki that Usopp is actually going to be proficient in. And Future Sight would allow him to literally see where Van Augur is going to teleport to before he gets there. Nah, just thinking about this fight, I'm excited to see what happens, because snipers don't really fight against each other in One Piece for real. And finally, you've all guessed it by now because this is all that's left. That means we're going to be giving Nami to Lafitte. Now here's the thing. First of all, Lafitte and Nami have fairly similar personalities. They're both kind of devious in some ways, but most of all, they're the ones that are in their captain's ear even more than the supposed first mates. If you see Blackbeard, a lot of the time Lafitte is the one who he's deferring to, or Lafitte is the one talking to him in terms of planning and future steps. I mean, even in the most recent chapter, we saw that Lafitte was the one Blackbeard entrusted the whole Celestial Dragon overview mission to. So they not only have similar personalities, but also similar roles. Lafitte is also the navigator, so point there. And yeah, even though he's not one of the actual strongest like Burgess or Shiryu, planning wise and important wise, he definitely plays a role, especially being one of the founding members. And then my final reason is because of his devil fruit. Whatever he can turn into seems to be able to sprout wings. And what do we know about Nami? She loves to use lightning. Anyone who's played Pokemon before knows where I'm going with this. But if we bring up the type chart real quick, electric type moves are super effective on flying types. Therefore, shock that bird. But that's gonna do it for this video, y'all. I just wanted to put my own predictions of who the Straw Hats are actually gonna match up against out there. You know, so that when I'm right, I can come back to it and laugh at all of y'all. Unless you agree with me, in which case, you're amazing. I love you. That is going to be the end of this week's video, y'all. But please, before you go, like the video, subscribe to the channel for more One Piece content just like this every single week, and share it around with all your friends who love the series, or anime and manga in general. Or hey, maybe if you're feeling generous, share it because you love me. I'll buy something for you, I promise. That's going to be all from me. I'll catch y'all next week. And always remember, One Piece, one life. Listen. All I'm saying is that at the end of the day, Blackbeard jumped Law with half of his Titanic captains and still struggled to beat him, let alone one shot. Meanwhile, Shanks decimated both Kid and Killer alone in one swing. Stop telling me that they're the same. They are not. It is incomprehensible, and the sooner that Blackbeard fans realize that that's not an actual thing, the better off we'll all be.